In 1882, newspapers called it the eighth wonder of the world. In 2003, most of it was gone. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring historic photographs of the Kinzua Viaduct to life. What you are about to see is a structure that took 94 working days to build and less than 30 seconds to fall. This is McKean County, Pennsylvania, in 1881. The landscape is forest and rock. Deep gorges cut through the Allegheny Plateau. The nearest large city is a full day's travel away. Thomas Kane had a problem. He was president of the New York, Lake Erie, and Western Railway. His company needed to move coal, oil, and lumber from the forests of McKean County to markets in the east. The existing route required 8 additional miles of track over rough terrain. It was slow. It was expensive. Kane proposed something different. Instead of going around the Kinzua Creek Valley, he would go across it. The valley was nearly 1/3 of a mile wide. At its deepest point, it dropped 301 feet to the creek below. A bridge of that height had never been built for railroad use anywhere in the world. Kane hired Octave Chanute to design it. Chanute was one of the most respected civil engineers in America. He had already designed the first railroad bridge across the Missouri River. In later years, he would correspond regularly with a pair of bicycle mechanics from Dayton, Ohio, men named Orville and Wilbur Wright. Chanute awarded the construction contract to the Phoenix Bridge Company of Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. Phoenix specialized in a patented hollow iron column, lightweight, strong, and modular. Workers could assemble the towers piece by piece without scaffolding. Construction began on May 10, 1882. The crew numbered 40 men. They had no scaffolding. They had no heavy equipment in the modern sense. What they had was a technique. The first tower was assembled using a gin pole. Once that tower stood, a traveling crane was installed on top. The crane was used to build the second tower. Then it moved again, then again. Each tower rose from 110 sandstone piers quarried from the hillside. The piers were embedded as deep as 35 feet into the ground. Long anchor bolts held each tower base to the stone below. On August 29, 1882, the last section was completed. The job had taken 94 working days. The bridge stretched 2,053 feet across the valley. It weighed 3.1 million pounds. The iron had been delivered, assembled, and bolted into place by a crew that would fit in a single passenger train car. The cost was $167,000. Newspapers called it the eighth wonder of the world. Excursion trains from Buffalo and Pittsburgh began running almost immediately. Tickets cost about $1. On summer Sundays, as many as 8 trains crossed the bridge in a single day. Some passengers climbed the ironwork to get a better view. Many had to be rescued when they discovered they could not climb back down. Within a year of opening, engineers noted something. High winds had pushed the bridge 2 7/8 inches out of alignment. The structure moved. It flexed. A railroad man told a reporter in 1900, "I don't like to cross the Kinzua Bridge. Someday during a severe storm, that bridge is liable to get a bad shaking up." Nobody acted on the warning. For 18 years, trains crossed the viaduct without incident. Then, by 1900, the bridge had reached its load limit. Locomotives were getting heavier. Coal cars were getting heavier. The wrought iron structure was designed for the trains of 1882. By 1900, it could no longer carry them. The decision was made to rebuild. On May 24, 1900, work began. The challenge was unusual. Engineers could not simply tear the bridge down. They needed to keep operating the line. The solution was to replace one tower at a time. Massive traveling frames were used to demolish an existing tower and build a new steel one in its place. Each frame was 180 feet long. Each replacement took about 1 week. When one tower was done, the frame moved to the next. The new bridge used steel fabricated by the Elmira Bridge Company. The crew numbered up to 150 men. They worked 10-hour shifts. The project took 105 days. The new structure weighed 6.7 million pounds. It was more than twice as heavy as the iron bridge it replaced. The height was 301 feet. The length was 2,053 feet. The bridge reopened on September 25, 1900. One detail was not addressed during the reconstruction. The original anchor bolts, the iron rods embedded in the sandstone piers in 1882, were not replaced. Engineers connected the new steel towers to the old bolts using collar assemblies. The designer later admitted this was a mistake. The bolts were now 18 years old. They would eventually become more than a century old. The Erie Railroad operated trains across the viaduct until 1959. By then, the coal deposits of McKean County were largely depleted. Traffic had declined. The bridge was sold to the Kovalchik Salvage Company for scrap. The salvage company looked at the structure. They changed their mind. Instead of scrapping it, they sold it to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The state paid nearly the same price the salvage company had. In 1963, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania purchased the bridge. In 1970, the area became Kinzua Bridge State Park. In 1977, it was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. In 1982, the American Society of Civil Engineers named it a National Historic Civil Engineering Landmark. In 1987, excursion trains began running again. The Knox and Kane Railroad purchased a short section of the old line and began carrying tourists across the gorge. Thousands of passengers per year stood on the bridge deck, 301 feet above Kinzua Creek. The view was described by one passenger in 1998 as more like ballooning than railroading. By the late 1990s, the park was drawing more than 200,000 visitors per year. In February 2002, engineers from the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources conducted an inspection. What they found was serious. Sections of steel were rusted through. The anchor bolts, the original bolts from 1882, were heavily corroded. Engineers concluded that high winds could push the tower sideways, shift the structure's center of gravity, and send the entire bridge to the valley floor. Excursion trains were halted in June 2002. The bridge was closed to pedestrians in August 2002. In February 2003, a construction company began emergency restoration work. The project budget was $10.8 million. The goal was to repair the rusted sections and stabilize the structure. Restoration work was underway on July 21, 2003. The afternoon of July 21 was hot and humid. A large storm system was moving across northern Pennsylvania. By early afternoon, conditions were deteriorating. At approximately 3:00 in the afternoon, Floyd Quillen, the construction superintendent from W.M. Broad Company, ordered his crew to leave the worksite. He sent them back to the motel where they were staying. A construction worker named Kenneth Filey later wrote, "As we were leaving, the wind started to pick up. By the time we got to the park entrance, it was blowing hard and trees were falling all around us. At approximately 3:15 p.m., a tornado touched down just west of Kinzua Bridge State Park. It was classified as an F1. Wind speeds reached 100 miles per hour. The tornado moved east-northeast, directly toward the bridge. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. The tornado struck the center of the viaduct from the side. the lateral wind pressure pushed against the towers. The 121-year-old anchor bolts, corroded, weakened, never replaced, failed. Tower 10 went down. Tower 11 went down. 3 center towers were lifted from their bases, moved slightly northwest, and set back down, still connected by the railroad tracks. Zone. 6 towers to the east collapsed to the west. As the tornado continued north, the wind reversed direction and pulled those 3 suspended towers down. Toward the northeast, the collapse followed a cyclonic pattern across the valley floor. 11 of the 20 towers were destroyed. 1,200 feet of the bridge now lay at the bottom of Kinzua Creek Valley. From the undamaged western approach, the railroad tracks ran normally for 624 feet, and then bent upward, curled over the edge, and dropped into empty air. One park employee was injured, trapped in a maintenance building by fallen trees. The construction crew was not on the bridge. Quillen had sent them away minutes before the tornado arrived. Engineers were called in to analyze the collapse. Their report identified the anchor bolts as the primary failure point. The bolts had corroded over more than a century. The collar assemblies connecting the original 1882 bolts to the newer steel towers had weakened at the joints. When lateral wind forces reached 94 miles per hour, the system failed. Rebuilding the bridge would cost an estimated $45 million. Pennsylvania decided not to rebuild. Instead, the state made a different decision. The fallen towers would remain in the valley. The ruins would be preserved as evidence. The surviving western section would become something new. In 2011, the Kinzua Skywalk opened. It runs 624 feet along the original bridge deck. It ends at a glass-floored observation platform suspended 225 feet above the valley. Below the glass, visitors look down at the ruins of the 11 towers that fell in 2003. The anchor bolts that failed are still there. They are displayed in the visitor center. In 1882, a crew of 40 men built the highest railroad bridge in the world. They did it in 94 days. They used no scaffolding. They used no cranes in the modern sense. They used a traveling wooden frame and wrought iron columns that looked, to many observers, like wooden logs. The bridge outlasted the railroad that built it. It outlasted the company that designed it. It outlasted the ore it was built to carry. What it did not outlast were the bolts embedded in the stone in 1882, the ones no one had replaced in 1900, the ones engineers found corroded and failing in 2002. The ones that held for 121 years, until a July afternoon when the wind came in from the west at 100 miles per hour. The valley is still there. The gorge is still 301 feet deep. 6 towers still stand, and 1,200 feet of steel lies at the bottom, in the same position it landed on July 21, 2003, at approximately 3:15 in the afternoon. Nobody moved it. Nobody salvaged it. Pennsylvania left it exactly where it fell.